So good morning, everybody. Again, welcome to week number 100, I think, as we're going through the virtual program this year. Obviously, this wasn't what we were planning, but things have worked out pretty good, and sessions like this have been very productive. So we appreciate everybody taking the time to join us this morning. We want to thank Klein's Entertainment and Attractions for their sponsorship this morning. Always a great sponsor, the Ohio Fair Managers Association. They work quite a bit with Mahoning County in that, and they do quite a bit for us along the way. So we certainly thank them for joining us and being a sponsor here today. The topic on today's program is a review of the chart of accounts. This is something that's been in the process for about 1.5 years, almost 2 full years now. The auditor's office reached out to us along with us reaching out to them, and we worked on putting together a plan. Bev Fisher spearheaded it. I know Diana Cochran from Jaga and Summit helped out along the way, but Richard Cunningham from the auditor's office, he's here with us this morning. It was a fantastic opportunity to work with him as well. And it was refreshing. And I think Bev would agree to have the auditor's office engaged in fair managers in our fair industry and business on a productive scale and a productive manner. They were very, very helpful along the way. And they pledged a commitment to try and help us out with stuff. You know, they got the review with the Hinkle system and everything like that in as well. So the session will be recorded today, posted to the Ohio Fair Managers website. It'll be available on YouTube. The PDF files that they'll be presenting are there in that convention drop-down box. You saw that just a few minutes ago. And then in the chat box, Meg's got the link to get the certificates of education, continuing certificates and stuff to go from there. I don't know if, I guess I haven't seen the list. Is Morgan on this morning? Morgan Lyles from the Department of Agriculture. Also, we want to give a shout out to her. She did a fantastic job in helping us out and working with us and part of that review process. So that being said, Meg, I guess if we'll kick it over to Bev, and if you want to bring her stuff up, we can get going. So.
Morning, everybody. Thanks for being on. Morning, Richard. I saw you were on my screen now. I don't know where you disappeared to, but Richard Cunningham.
Good morning.
There you go. Now you're back. He's been really great to work with. We've kind of went through this. The PDF that Meg is going to put up is the May 2020 revision of the chart of accounts. We're not going to go through it line by line because as Diane and I sat with Richard and Morgan, we kind of went through, tried to clean it up a little bit. And so we're just going to kind of hit some of the highlights. This is available on the auditor's website. You can download the newest version. For those of you that don't know, this gives you a description of what should be in some of the accounts. After my last session that I had a month and a half ago, I sent my chart of accounts to quite a few people, and I'm willing to do that. We are on QuickBooks 2019. I've got my chart of accounts. It's a little bit different than this one, but I do that so that the directors can get the reports they want. But this book would give you a description of what should be in those accounts, which will help you with your state report if you set it up accordingly. So we're going to just go down through it, Meg, kind of page by page, and you'll see where I highlighted some of the things on page 4. We didn't change. Okay, on page 4 is where it kind of gives you a description of your cash accounts and where you should be, startup cash, premiums, that kind of stuff. Page 5 is your double entry, making sure that you have your budget set, some of the terminology that the auditors are looking for when they come in to audit. On page 6, you'll notice Diana, she uses a cash register. I do not. So Diana, do you want to cover kind of what you put into the cash register section to help the auditors out?
Okay, so what I put in there is that when there's a cash register device, when you close out the cash register at night, your bank deposit needs to match that closeout, and so your deposit slip and your closeout slips all match.
and should be filed together, correct?
Correct.
That would make it much easier when the auditor comes in, and if that's one of the things that they pull out, you automatically have everything tied together. That section was not in the old chart of accounts. Page 7, Meg, the credit card purchasing. Again, Diana, that was you.
That was saying that we could no longer use a debit card. You can use a credit card, but you can no longer use a debit card that actually draws money straight out of your accounts.
Richard, can you clarify that for some of the fairs that have and or are using debit cards?
Yes, they can no longer use debit cards. So if they have debit cards, they need to close out and get rid of those. The laws and the rules changed. I think actually the debit cards weren't allowed all along. This new section that was added also refers to an auditor state bulletin that came out in 2018, and there's a link there. If that link doesn't work, they can get to it through our website, to that audit bulletin, and it describes about the written policies. There was a House bill that was passed a few years ago that requires credit card policies. There's different types of policies, and that bulletin will walk them through if they don't have existing policies on what they need to do and how they need to create those credit card policies.
So debit cards, if you have one, get rid of it. And kind of follow the guidelines for the credit card purchasing. If you have credit cards, Richard, you have to either leave it in the office or it has to be designated by person, correct? It can't be just one that you're supposedly passing around.
Yes, I think so. I don't remember all the requirements within that bulletin off the top of my head, but they're outlined in the bulletin on how the policy is set up. But I think the better control is that they're assigned out and then turned back in, so you don't have multiple people controlling them. Somebody needs to be designated to be in charge of monitoring the credit cards and know who has access to them, who's using them at any particular point in time.
And then the credit card receipt needs to be turned back in and matched to the bill to verify that the purchase was for the fair and who purchased it, who authorized it.
Right, and try to get a detailed receipt. Don't just get the credit card receipt only, because a credit card receipt's just going to show a grand total amount. You still need a detailed receipt that's going to break down exactly what was purchased, so that both the fair boards or the auditors coming in can tell exactly what was purchased. Was everything for proper public purpose? A lot of times we'll see this if people are attending seminars or they're out traveling and they're getting meals, to check and make sure, okay, who the meal's for. Is it just for that one person? They're designated people. We make a big deal about alcoholic purchases can't be purchased, and sometimes people will buy those by mistake. So we want to see the detailed receipts to make sure nobody's purchasing alcoholic beverages of any type and being paid for with fair board monies.
Okay. You'll notice on that page also, it gives you an explanation of the ticket sales, the deposits, your cash receipt from your tote, from your racing, interest in dividends, and working on your expenses. So the auditor has kind of put together a nice description of how they are looking at it. And granted, we know and we understand every district's auditor looks for something different. So this is mainly a guideline to try to help simplify your life when you try to put ticket sales together. What are they looking for? What are they trying to accomplish? So if you do have questions, Richard, what's the best way to do? Try to get a hold of you, or try, because when you call a regional auditor, sometimes they don't understand, but you've been working with this with us and Morgan.
Yes, I don't have a problem if you make everybody aware of my email address and they can go through me. If they've worked with some of the regional auditors before and they have a contact person that they've worked with, it might be better or easier that they contact somebody that they've already had a working relationship with. But if they happen to be in a situation or instance where they don't have a contact, they can feel free to contact me. And also keeping in mind that some of these audits we contract out to CPA firms. We call them IPAs or independent public accountants. So you could have a CPA firm besides the auditor state's office. And if you do or you work with them, you may want to contact them directly because they're the ones actually doing the audit. But I have no problem if they can't get an answer elsewhere or contacting you or somebody else from the board. If they've got more of an audit type related question, they feel free to call me.
Okay. And also, as we go along, if you have any questions, go ahead and put it in the chat room. And Meg is kind of watching out a little bit along with me, and we'll try to answer them as we go along. Don't want to hurry through this. Want to make sure that you have the opportunity to ask questions of, any of us, Richard, myself, Diana. We're all here to try to help you get through this. We didn't change a lot of the numbers. We deleted some things that were obsolete that after we talked about it, we said there's no fairs using it and it's making it confusing. So we did delete a few numbers, but those are marked on this process as we go through. Page 8 covers your payroll, your taxes, benefits. Again, it's just mainly a simplified description of what they expect in some of these accounts. So when you're setting up your chart of accounts, you can say, your fixed assets or those things that are long lasting. So that those are kind of self-explanatory. The page 9, we get into your insurance and having an audit committee. Seriously ought to have an audit committee, somebody that looks through the books and is responsible for working with the auditor when that comes in, and they should be monitoring the financials continuously, not just, the treasurer. So it always helps if you have a committee that's responsible for looking at how things are going and making sure that things are technically put in the right place and that the fairgrounds financial is being reviewed. The open meeting rule, that was added. And there's the code that says you must abide by the sunshine law, as well as public records. Your public records, you should have a public records policy, and that is on your 990. It asks if you do have a public records policy. You should have one of those set, as well as a record retention schedule. That is also a policy that on your 990, it asks if you have one set. So your board should have those. If you don't, contact Paul Harris or myself. We both, or Howard. We all have some that we have written. Doesn't mean you have to use ours, but it may give you some highlights of things that you need to have in yours. But you really need to make sure you have those. For any of you that are new treasurers, when you go through an audit or when you file the 990, those are a couple of the questions that you're going to have to answer. So try to have your board enact those two. Your junior fair, sorry, your junior fair, it kind of gives you an idea. The 9300 codes are the junior fair categories, and we'll get to that at towards the end. But this gives you an idea of what they're looking at. And remember that if the junior fair has their own accounts, you really should be overseeing those to some extent. You should, not saying you have to pull them all in, but you really should try to watch, how the junior fair is collecting money and where they're spending it. Can you make sure that your IPAs know that many of us are part-time employees or volunteers? Our last IPA auditor was very demanding, not understanding that the records are at the fairgrounds, not in the treasurer's home or place of work. So a little patience is necessary when requesting information. Richard, I think that goes to you. Is there a way we can notify the IPAs before they go out?
Well, we really can't control exactly what the IPAs are doing. That's something that should be done from your end. Ideally, the IPA should be contacting the entities early and making arrangements, having, at least from our end, we have pre-audit meetings or at least initially touch base, but there needs to be communication between the two parties and arranging and figuring out when stuff is available and when to do the audit. All the auditors are going to be a little bit different. I know some of them are going to be a little bit more pushier than others and more picky. I always stress to our auditors that you need to communicate with people early. You need to plan and schedule, work around everybody's schedule. There are certain times of the year that's not going to work real well. We always know during fair weeks is always a real bad time. So we try to give people as much advance notice as possible of records that we're going to need and when we're going to fit it into the schedule. But as I said, you're going to have some auditors that are going to want to try to get extra pushy. If you run into specific situations, you can always contact our office, contact the regional office, the chief auditors or somebody could get involved. The IPAs still have a contract through us. I mean, if there's certain specific situations we could try to get involved with, but that it isn't something that we would generally make a big statement or approach the IPAs up front. It's something they should know about contacting the entities ahead of time and scheduling and working around your schedules.
Okay. The next statement, Richard, don't go too far. I'm updating the records retention schedule. How long are we required to keep election records and results?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I know I think it's the Ohio Historical Society puts charts and records out of which type of records need to be kept for what period of time. I'm not sure if you could do a search online and try to find that information. You could also try to check with the county prosecutor or some legal counsel. They would probably have some information. And I know different records vary depending how long of a period that you need to keep them for. So I'm not sure exactly for sure how long those need to be kept.
Okay, Judy answered that some of these are permanent records. And I will tell you, in Mahoning County, they told us we're a historical site, so we get to keep them forever.
Yeah, certain records have to be kept forever. So that's why I said there's a main chart out there of what needs to be kept forever and ever, and other things, what period of time that you need to keep them through. So I would check through the prosecutor's office and so forth. Something else I wanted to mention real quick when you were talking about the public records policy and the open meetings and sunshine laws, which we didn't include in this manual, and I think maybe we had rough drafts at the time that this bulletin came out, but everybody may want to write this down. There's another bulletin that our office put out, 2019-003, that's available on our website. And that deals a lot with the Ohio Sunshine laws. And we also started a new STARS rating program and system. But if you look through that bulletin, it'll walk you through and outline what the minimum requirements are and what you need to do and keep as far as the public record policy, what the training requirements are to keep up to date with any kind of public records training and so forth.
The other thing, Richard, isn't there a way, and I think I did it by accident, but isn't there a way you can sign up to get the auditor's bulletins automatically sent to the fair office? Because somehow I get the bulletins all the time when he puts one out. They don't always pertain to us, but it's nice to get them to see what's going on.
Right. I'm not exactly sure how that's done or how that's controlled. If it's just through when you're signed up for like your billings and so forth, whoever the main contact person is, if that's through, I don't know if they call it the GP system or what the system is that we use, if whoever's signed up or email addresses in there that gets sent those automatically. They are available on our website if you go and check on the website. If you do want them emailed to you and you're not getting them, I would call the 800 number in Columbus. They can probably put you in charge of the right department in Columbus that might control that. They could add you to a list, but I'm not sure. Probably somebody in our media sections handling and sending those out. I think the generic 800 number down there is 800-282. No, I'm not even sure what it is right now. I think it's a 0370. See if I can find it here. Yeah, 800-282-0370. That's the main switchboard number in Columbus, and they can get you in contact with whatever department might handle that and ensure that you're getting them emailed out to you if you want them sent to you automatically.
Okay. And Meg has pulled up the auditor's website, and she's showing you how to go down through over to the publications under quick links. Go to publication, and she pulled up that 2019-003. Whoa.
In the right-hand column towards the bottom are all the audit bulletins. Go up a little bit. Where it says manuals in the right-hand column. Start
Okay.
paging down on that. You will notice, let's see, right there is a uniform system of accounting for agricultural society. So that
Down, Meg.
manual that she's showing, that's where you locate the manual. Keep going
it,
further
Meg?
down.
Yep. Down under Ohio Township Handbook, School District, there's the Uniform Code of Accounting for Agricultural Societies. That one's the one that we are reviewing today. So if you want to print it out, you can get it there.
And the technical bulletins are down there at the bottom where it says bulletins 2020 to 1995. If you click on that, it'll open up to the year. And then the left-hand column, you can click on whatever year you want and find that bulletin. So if you want to find the 2019-03, click on that and go down. And there's the 2019-03 on the Ohio Sunshine Law and the new STARS rating program.
And this is what they look like. Like I said, when I signed up to get our billing and stuff online, whenever the auditor does a bulletin, I automatically get them. So again, they don't always pertain to us, but it's nice to get them and see what else is going on when you don't have anything to read and you want to go to sleep. Sorry, Richard. Okay, so Brenda from Trumbull, our county made their retention records. Our county made our retention record. When I want to dispose of things, I send to them. They send to state for approval, then let me know when I can dispose of them. That came from Brenda. So they had their county help them with their retention records and what they can keep and not keep. Again, in Mahoney, we're considered a historical site, and I was told I can't get rid of anything. So I just built another room. So, okay, Meg, can we go back to, Meg did post in the chat room the link to get on the auditor's site, get the bulletin. And again, you can get the chart of accounts that we're covering today. If you don't have it and you want to get the most updated one, it also is on that auditor's website. And Jody says the county auditor is the record retention officer for each county. So Jody says check with your county auditor. Each ag society does have to have a records retention policy in their own set of rules. Back for our chart of accounts, Meg. Uh-oh. And OFMA will post the auditor's doc for fairs from the auditor's site. So OFMA will put the auditor's doc on the site. So just keep checking the OFMA site. Trumbull County says, I do know the county historical group helped the county make their records retention policy. So you may want to check with your county historical and your prosecutor. Page 10 talks about your junior livestock sales. I don't know how many of you are running your own sales, how many of you have market livestock clubs that run them. We had a discussion last week at our market livestock. We have in Mahoning, we have a market livestock club that runs the sale for us. It does not go through our books, and the discussion come up about 1099s to be issued. And at this point, because the kids are under the age of 18 and most of them don't file the taxes and or it's under 600, we are not issuing 1099s. Did some checking at a couple fairs. They also have not issued 1099s. So if you run it through your books, you may want to check and see if you're going to do that. It does turn into a little bit of an issue getting Social Security numbers from the kids because the parents are reluctant to do it for some reason. And most of the kids don't file tax returns anyhow because they're 10, 11, and 12-year-olds. So, but you do need to be cognizant of what's going through the junior fair books. If they're not in your actual booking program, you need to be cognizant of what they're bringing in, what's being sold, just oversee it. We audit the books once a year for that. And, just to make sure that things are flowing and that nobody's getting too eager to move money around without us knowing it. As a senior fair, you are responsible for the junior fair portion. On to page 11. This is where the actual chart of accounts. I assume most of you, and I see there's 46 of us on here, I assume most of you know what the chart of accounts should look like. We did update it and move a few things around. On the left-hand side, I tried to note some of the things we did. We did delete code 1250. 1250 said student tickets. Well, that didn't make a whole lot of sense because student tickets is a ticket. It could be under 1220. It could be under 1210. There wasn't enough of us using 1250 to keep it. So we elected to delete that as an unused item. We also deleted 1330. If you notice, 1330 in the old chart of accounts said buildings. Flat rate for buildings for vendors leased during the fair. Well, that's kind of silly because 1320 said the same thing. Fees for space inside buildings. So we took 1330 out. Didn't need to have it broke down in two different categories. Other than that, just kind of cleaned up a little bit of the verbiage, but nothing, just tried to make it a little easier for everyone to follow and be on the same numbering system. The next page, I got both sets here so I can see what I deleted. Okay, set 12. We really did not change anything under sales during fair. We tried to clean up and be a little more specific in some of the stuff you're selling. Racing fees, down at the bottom, 1600 sales during other activities. We tried to clean that up, and that's only if you're doing pop and vending machines because you already have sales during fair. So if you want to keep track of the different sales, really, going down through, again, if you have any questions, pop them in there, but I'm not going to read every number. Once you download this, you'll be able to see we really didn't change a lot of numbers. So everybody getting kind of curious about what numbers we changed, we didn't. We just cleaned it up some. On page 13, again, we didn't change anything. Your contest fees are those things that you have as a contest, tractor pull, horse pulls, demo derby. Just trying to clean up. They're different than a class entry fee. The rentals of your grounds, again, just trying to be specific. If you rent the grounds, the buildings, if you have camper spaces you rent, equipment, stalls, and storage. Page 14, I highlighted, this is your state support. And you'll notice, you know, I highlighted state and local. So state money is money that you get from Ohio Fairs Fund, ODA. You need to code it in the 2100s. When you get local money, whether it's from the county, you know, if your county supports you, it used to be 3,300. What is it now, Paul? Used to be 3,300. We upped that with House Bill 665. But you need to keep them separate. Your state money comes from ODA in the state, and the local is your county government that gave you money, your county commissioners. And we broke those down with an explanation. If they give you a senior fair board, and now that we upped it, we're going to have to go back and update this book because county money for senior fair board is at 800 and that changed. So we're going to have to kind of update these, which won't be hard, but it follows the Ohio Revised Code. And hang on, Judy wants to know about how long-term leases. We have a football field, a swimming pool, community center, McDonald High School football field, and a bunch of others. So you're saying on the income side, when you rent your grounds, Judy, or Jody, I'm sorry, Jody, should have put my glasses in. I'm assuming she's talking on the income side. And oh, yes, okay. When you rent the grounds, you could put it under a 1910. You're really only supposed to show the money that you get in a year in that year, not carry years over. But you would put it under your 1910, which is rental of the grounds. I set up a special code so that the directors here can follow it. If it's the rent of the football field, it's a certain code. The swimming pool's a code. The community center, everything on mine has its own number. So we can keep track of how much we get for the hay and grain building rental or the event center. I set them all up under the 1900 code, whether it's the grounds or the buildings, and they all have their own separate numbers. Which then you can link it all back to the 1900. On QuickBooks, you can set up a separate code for each one and have it linked back to the total going to the 1900 code. So it would give you one total for your report, but it would keep track of the different entities or different buildings and stuff you're renting. So that goes under the 1900s. Down to the 3000s and the 3100. The 3100 codes, that one got used a lot this year, Richard, because we did our CARES money and we used 3190, which was other restricted support. Now on here it says Junior Fair Livestock Sales Receipt, but I made one that said CARES funds. So you need to use the 3100s. Your 3110 is grants and donations. 3120 is, gifts and donations, sorry. 3120 is grants. And it has the explanation right there for funds received from businesses, individuals that have no interest payment or principal to be paid back. 3130 is your sponsorships. And again, I try to keep mine separate. If people give me money for a water wagon, I keep it separate from the guy that gave me money for a sheep pen. So we try to list those all separate. If you get to your 3140 at the top, that's money if you're selling things in your horse racing, or if you sell sponsorships and use it in your premium book for advertising, you need to be keeping track of that. Now, the 3190, again, it says junior fair livestock sale receipts, other restricted support. Richard and I talked, and we put our CARES money in that this year because we wanted, it was restricted. It had to be used for COVID-19 supplies, and CARES money had to be recorded and receipted. So we try to keep it in one spot for everybody so that it was uniform for the auditor. If you go to the 3200s, pretty much the same categories, but that's unrestricted. So if somebody just gives you $10,000 and says, you know, can the fair use this? Is it a gift? Is it a grant? Are they going to sponsor an event, but it's not going to tell you you have to buy the trophy? You need to be cognizant of those ones. That's why they're listed separate. The top 3100s are all restricted use. 3200s are unrestricted. They gave you the money, but they're not requiring you to do a specific thing with it.
I've got a question.
No, I don't have a chat. You go, oh, some money that comes in for banners for specific locations would go 3190. The money that comes in for banners for a specific location, that could go under the 3190. Yes. It could go under the 3140, but I would put it under the 3190 and list it accordingly. If it's restricted on where it has to go and how it has to be used, yes.
Bev, can I mention a few things about the CARES Act money?
There you go. Yes, sir.
Okay. As Bev was saying, probably the 3100 somewhere is going to be the best place if you got CARES Act money or any other kind of COVID-19 related money, because it is restricted money, so it is restricted support. It's also federal money. The problem is when this chart of accounts was set up, you don't normally receive federal funds and federal money, so we don't have a federal category. We have the state support, we have local support. It really shouldn't go under either one of those, because although the money may be passing through a state agency before you get it, it's not state money, it's still federal money. More than likely, your auditors may break it out on the audit report as a federal line item because the feds still want that money tracked separately. But either 3190, I've seen some people putting it under 3120 or asking, because 3120 is still grants, and essentially that CARES Act money is a federal grant, it's federal money. So either 3120, 3190, somewhere in the 3100s. If you put it someplace else, at least document why you put it where you put it, or to point out to the auditors if the auditors come in so they can see it and they can tell what it is. If they want to break it out separately for the audit report, they can break it out separately. Potentially, this is something we can look at going forward for another amendment or change to the chart of accounts and create a completely separate category in the future for federal money. However, I don't know, once all this COVID-19 stuff is over with, if there's going to continue to be similar funding. We may want to wait a few more months, see what's going to happen, if it's worthwhile to add to the chart of accounts in the future or not. If this is going to be kind of a one-time thing or through this year and going forward, you're not going to get federal money again, it may not be worthwhile to create a federal category. So that's about all I wanted to say on that. I'll let you continue on, Bev.
No, thank you, Richard. You'll notice down here that I hand wrote, we did away with 3500. The 3500 code seemed to be very confusing to a lot of people. It was classified advance in, and when we were working on the state report, I got a lot of questions about using 3500 for advances in and 9600 for advances out. I'm proud to say we did away with both of them. Not being used a lot, and most of the time not being used correctly. There's other ways that you can keep track of advances out and advances in. Your advances out, from what I was gathering when we were doing the state report, a lot of people were using that to advance gate money for their gate staff to get the cash to make change. And then they were putting it back in under the 9600 code advances back in. And that there's a lot easier way to do it. In your chart of accounts, if you make an account, and I'll just tell you what we have account 0001D, as in dog. If I need to transfer and get some money for the gate guys to be able to make change, if I write them a check for $5,000, I put it in transfer. It comes out of my checking account as a credit and debits the transfer account. The money still belongs to the fairgrounds, so it still shows on the balance sheet, but it's out of the checking account. When they sell the tickets and start making deposits at the gate, I get my $5,000 back first. So out of the day's deposit, I credit 0001D and debit the checking account. So you can do that and keep track of it a lot easier than coding it 3,500 and 9,600. The money still belongs to the fairgrounds. So I kept it on the balance sheet because if I advance it out in August, our fair's in September, I want it on the August balance sheet that we still have that money in our books. I need to account for it. And I do that for trailer park startup, gate startup, and anybody that needs money to get started, for concessions, for the girls to have money to check people in. I take their money and put it into the 01D. And as I put it back in, as they make their deposits, I can go back and say, hey, I'm still missing $100 of yours. Oh yeah, they didn't turn it back in. I can track it better than having two separate accounts and trying to watch it. So it's easier if you can set up one account, and it really should be on your balance sheet because the money still belongs to the fair board. So you need to be able to track it, and you need to know who hasn't turned their startup or their beginning money back in. So we did away with the code 3500, which was advances in. And that was temporarily relocating funds from one account to another. And we talked about it and said that really is not necessary. And code 3700 we deleted was common stock dividends. Not too many of us have that anymore. So we got rid of that account. So again, just trying to clean things up. The sale of assets, you know, if you're selling any of the property to try to make ends meet now, make sure you code it in there and you keep track of it. Again, you know, you need to make sure that if you are selling assets that you're doing it correctly as a public entity, not just letting somebody buy something out of a building. Page 16, Meg. Okay, so this one we did not change much until you get down at the bottom. The 4,000 codes are still your wages. The 5,000s are your benefits, whether it's the fares portion of FICA, Social Security, workers' comp, insurance. I put tuition reimbursement. I called it continuing education. If we go to classes and something, you know, they'll reimburse us. We need to keep track of that. When you get down to the 6,100, I highlighted things that were of importance. The Board of Directors monthly meeting compensation maximum payment shall not exceed the limit established in accordance with the Ohio Administrative Code, and there's the code. I know in our Constitution, we put that we follow what the Red Book says. And that's what this is saying. You can't exceed, if the Red Book says you're allowed to have $30 a meeting, you can't be paying $50 a meeting because it says you shall not exceed this rule, 901-5-09. The same thing with your travel expenses. Our Constitution at our fair says we pay what the Red Book says, which I believe, Paul, is 45 cents a mile now. So if you're doing travel reimbursement to your directors, be cognizant, you shall not exceed the amount set forth in this administrative code. So if it changes, you don't have to change your Constitution all the time. Just follow this administrative code and you'll be okay, but you can't just arbitrarily overpay directors for meetings and mileage.
Is
The other big-
the one section, Bev, in that code, as you know, with House Bill 665's passage. Now we need to go back in and revisit all these, and we're working with Morgan and Dave Marin down at ODA to go back in and revisit. These are two areas that we will probably propose a raise. Does not mean you need to go up, but we'll probably give you the flexibility to raise what you pay for mileage and meetings and stuff like that too. So just,
Yeah, and it
Right,
says shall not exceed, and I think the top one, you know, so you need to be cognizant, watch the red book. It's not very likely they're gonna go down, but if it does go up, then you could potentially compensate, but make sure in your constitution and bylaws for your fair that you have it worded correctly so that you don't get in trouble, you know, trying to pay more and your constitution says you're still giving the guys 12 bucks a meeting. That was 1904's rate. The other thing that is huge on here, and I highlighted, is you are not allowed to have a flower fund in your books. You're not allowed to pay for flowers for board members, that kind of stuff. You're not allowed to have flower funds. You can collect flower money. Richard, plug your ears, dear. You can collect flower money and have one of the directors pay for it out of theirs, but you cannot write funds out of a fair board's checking savings account to buy flowers for funeral hospitals, etc. It's not permitted. You want to add anything, Richard?
No, that sounds good to me. I mean, unless they can find something else to the contrary, but that shouldn't be run through the books because that's not a normal proper public purpose for the entity. But as you indicated, off the books, if within your office you want to take a collection and people voluntarily collect whatever they want to collect, and somebody's designated to go out and buy that from that collected money without running it through your books, I mean, that's perfectly fine. That way, I mean, people aren't obligated or committed. It's not commingled with the rest of the governmental monies in the books, and you can still purchase the flowers or the gifts or anything that you want to do off the books.
So just trying to keep you guys out of trouble, and that one for some reason seems to be a little sticky point, but
got a question there, Bev, on that one in chat box.
okay, well, you're getting them ahead of me. So what's it say? Oh, so if we do a donation, is that the same thing as flowers? Correct. You cannot do that and write a check from the fair board. And I will tell you, I do what Richard said. When we need to do flowers, I tell the guys the flower fund needs fed. They give me money. I write the check out of my own personal account, and the treasurer makes sure that I'm not, you know, that I have the money out of that donation that the directors made. In other words, if they take in $100 and the flowers were 80, I make sure the treasurer knows I only took $80 to write the check. But it's the same thing if you're making a donation. You cannot do that with the fairs funds. That's how we do our flower fund too, but I get a money order. Yeah. Yeah, I have an account at the florist, so they just bill me and I can show them what I spend. So, but just try to not get in trouble by doing that, because that seems to be a little bit of a sticky point. Page 17, Meg. Thank you. You'll notice we deleted 6130. It said ground maintenance expense. Well, that didn't make any sense because that's the exact same information that's in 6420, and it was confusing people. Administrative expenses, it used to say ground maintenance, supplies, materials purchased for the fairgrounds. Well, that's what 6420 said. So Diana recommended we do away with the one under the administrative supplies and materials and leave the one under ground supplies and materials. So we did away with that. We didn't move numbers. We just simply deleted ones that we're not using.
You got back up to the flower fund account. You got a pretty important question there. It says, can't you put the funds into the bank and then cut a check for the amount that was deposited so the net effect is zero?
Richard?
No, because you're going to have activity running through the banks. It's not running through your books, and somebody will have a fit with that. If even though it's netting out to zero, they're going to see activity that hit your bank account but didn't hit your book. So it shouldn't go on your books. It shouldn't go through your bank account either. It should be kept separate.
And she says, no, it is also in the books as well. Yeah, that's what the one thing you don't want. You don't want it on the books at all, showing activity of money deposited and money written out. It's a good thing Paul's keeping an eye on these because I can't keep them up. Should the term flower fund include other items? You could. Again, you know, we tried to update it. I don't know if you would put flower funds, community donations, you know, I don't, there's 100 probably things you could call it. We just thought we'd leave it simple and just, you know, you just can't send flowers out of the fair board. So Brooke, sorry, you can't put the money in and write a fair check out. You're better off if you just do it individually, independently, and or get a bill from the florist to hand them the cash and receipt it. Okay, so we did.
It basically comes down to being, is it really a proper public purpose for what your entity exists for? So you're an agricultural society running the agricultural society, running your fair and the fair board, buying flowers for somebody. That's not a purpose for what you exist for. So that's the main reason why that shouldn't really be done. So you have to look at those criteria and make sure any of your activity, is it really being used for the proper purpose of what you're established and set up for and how you're operating. Another thing we see sometimes, and it's really a gray area, and you'd have to have a policy or seek legal counsel and stuff, is maybe a retirement gift. I have seen some entities, they have a long-time employee and they retire and leave, and they want to buy that person a retirement gift. If you have a detailed policy and you have a legal opinion that says you can run something like that through your books, that could be a possibility, but I'd still be very, very careful with that. That's almost similar to a flower fund and buying flowers for somebody that's in the hospital or deceased or a celebration or whatever. That's not really your normal purpose. So just be careful when you get into those types of areas.
Thank you. Okay, so the 6130, again, if you look down.
Can you just clarify, because somebody said that they choose to buy a money order for the flower fund. I mean, is it important to do a money order or does it matter?
No, because you can buy the money order with the cash, and as long as, how do I put it? I have the treasurer oversee what we're doing. If you do a money order, you just can't write a check from the fairgrounds to go get the money order. You have to use the cash to get it. And I have the treasurer verify, what I spent and how much was collected and how much is left. So as long as you're tracking it, and as long as your fair board's comfortable with the way you're doing it, personally, you'll be okay. Just don't write a fair check out. I only use the money order when we do a donation. If it's flowers, she pays cash. So again, as long as you're responsible to somebody, I'm responsible to the treasurer and the fiscal officer to make sure I don't overspend where it comes out of my pocket. All right. Okay, so the 6130, if you look down under 6420, your ground maintenance is general maintenance and repair supplies, fuel costs, and vehicle. They said the exact same thing, so we got rid of 6130. And the next one, Meg. There again, we didn't cause anything. You'll see I got a little delete down there. I got a dash in there I got to get rid of, but that's just me in typing. Didn't change anything on this one. Your utilities, your racing expenses, keep track of those, stake racing, non-stake. On these codes, you can use 7220, and you can put a 0.01 behind it for Ohio stake racing, 0.02 for non-stake. In QuickBooks, you can put a 0.00 or a point number behind it if you want to keep those separate. If you're not worried about it, just use the codes that we've set up, and it'll help you fill out the state report because it'll all correlate together. Contractual services, would that include the rug company we use, or does that get coded somewhere else? The contractual, I'm assuming you're using someone like Cintas. That could go under your 6400. I have one set up for cleaning and office supplies. The contractual, most contractual should go under, you're gonna see how far back it is. You could put it under the 7600 code, and we'll get down to that. Really a stretch to put it under there. You're better off putting it under supplies and materials and giving it its own code. The 7600 codes is the contractual repairs and stuff. Rugs are not really a repair, so I would put them under the 6400, and you could put them under other supplies, give it its own code. You could put it under grounds maintenance and supplies. Just give it its own code so you can track it. Your professional fees for the 7300 codes, you just need to keep track of the different, again, we didn't delete anything. We just tried to clarify it and clean it up a little bit. Page 19, Meg, again, property services. Here you could see where it says cleaning and janitorial services. You could put your rugs under 7440. If it's considered the janitorial, it's not really restroom or porta pot, but you could put a code in there to keep track of it. The biggest thing is to keep track of it and keep consistent. So if you're gonna put it under 7440, again, you could put 0.03 and put rugs, entrance services. Those are things that you do to keep your property safe. So again, just kind of cleaned up some of the wording, the real estate taxes, the 7480. Most fairs aren't subject to real estate taxes. Unfortunately, some of us have things that have been tacked on. We have a cell tower back there that we do have to pay tax on that property because we're making money off of it every month. So you need to be cognizant of that. Your advertising, again, you can break it down as far as you want to go. These are the codes that will help you get the state report done correctly. Your legal ads, you're not going to have a lot of that right at the moment because with House Bill 665, we are now allowed to put some of our stuff on our website and our as far as the legal notice for election, your financial, some of that. So you do need to keep track of your advertising and communication. I break ours down so I know what our billboards cost, what each entity cost. Again, anybody that wants to see our chart of accounts, it's not gospel, it works for us. We set classes. In QuickBooks, you can set classes. So I have 56 classes. So I may have, say, 7520 newspaper ads. And it's advertising for the fair, but I can tell you whether that ad was for the cattle department, the junior fair, the arts and crafts department, just by tagging a class to it. So I only have to have one code, 7520, but I can tell you what class and what department it got charged to. So you don't have to have a whole bunch of different numbers. You can use the same number and just attach a class to it. That's 19. Page 20, Meg. Here's for your 7600 code. Again, it says repairs. That is things done by an outside contractor. Put in your mind, that's something that your staff can't do, you hired to have done. Whether it's fix a building, fix a tractor, a lawnmower, it's different than your repairs, which is a 6420 code. It's different because it is done by a contractor, something you cannot do in-house. So if you have somebody come and fix the air conditioner or furnace, 7690. But if your guy fixes it and you buy the parts to fix it yourself in-house, it goes under 6420, grounds maintenance. So if you buy the part and your director or your staff fixes it, it's a 6400 code. If you pay a contractor to come in and do the repair and they buy the parts and you pay them for the parts and the labor, it's under 7600, done by a contractor. The next one is your 7700 code. This one we had a lot of questions on. Again, in our chart of accounts, on mine, 7710 is insurance property. Don't have a lot of property. You know, the buildings are covered by the county. 7720 liability. I have a 7720.99. I paid my liability insurance, but they gave me half of it back because we didn't have a full fare. I put it in the 0.99 code, which said insurance refund. So anytime I get a refund on something I've paid out, I end the code with a 0.99. That way I can show I totally paid my insurance under 7720, but I got a refund back of half of it, a quarter of it. I do the same thing with workers' comp. The workers' comp number is 5030, but I have a 5030.99. So I paid my workers' comp and I got a refund. The refund went in 0.99. So I could show I paid my insurance, but I also show I got a refund separate. So that possessed a lot of questions for the state report also. And I recommended that they maybe do a 0.99 at the end of your number, because anything that ends in a 99, then you can track. I paid my insurance under 7720, but I got a refund back for half the money. So the directors were not confused about, well, didn't you pay the insurance? Well, yeah, but I can show a refund. Your 7800 codes are your leases, things that you rent specifically. Stuff you don't own that you rent and have brought in either at fair time and or for a summer show. So your 7870 chair rental, chairs and tables. Again, I have 7870.05 for chairs and tables. Tents are 0.07. So I do a point after it so that I can keep track of what it cost me to rent tables, chairs, tents, but it all kicks back to a 7870 for the state report and for the auditors. Okay, Meg, next one. Okay, again, your I skipped one, Meg. Oh, there we go. Your capital outlay, when you're making major purchases, your debt service, those are pretty self-explanatory. Your fair expenses, code 9130 in the old set of books said senior fair and open class premium trophy ribbons. Well, isn't that part of 9120? So we made 9120 your senior fair and open class expenses. So we changed it from 9130 to 9120. You don't have to go back and change your books as long until you update QuickBooks. You can leave it at 9130, or you can simply go and change it to 9120. Exact same rules and everything. We just changed the code to get a little more in line with what is on the next page also. So that's the only change on that one. On page 22, going up a page, Meg. There we go. Okay, your contest fees, kind of self-explanatory. Tractor pulls, this is where you would put your purse money from tractor pull is going to go in a different number. But this is your expense for tractor pull should go under contractual, your operating expense. In other words, if we have full pull and they charge us $10,000 to do the pull, but the purse money is $20,000, you'll see here it says tractor pull prize money. You only show the prize money under the contest expense. The actual tractor pull operating expense should be under the contractual, not here. This is prize money. So prize money paid out for tractor pull, and these expenses are what you show under 9220. So if you pay your band, if you pay sheep shearing, those are all either contest, but the operating expense, the cost that they charge you to come in and do that, should go under your contractual. Again, your junior fair expenses are your 9300 codes, and you should keep those when you do your state report. It's so much easier to have the 9300s broke down. Didn't change anything on those ones. I'm looking. The 9410 and 9420s we deleted off of those. Those used to be other judges' expenses, and Diana and I talked quite a while. We couldn't figure out what another judge expense would be. It's either a contest, senior fair, or junior fair. So we didn't know what those were. Other premiums, trophies, and ribbons. We couldn't figure out what those were. You either have contest, open, senior, or junior. You don't have odd things. So we did away with those and only kept the 9490, which is sale expenses, meal money for fair labor. You can see we didn't change any of that wording. We just got rid of the two that nobody was using. We deleted 9500, which was transfer out, and it's, according to this, you were to see code 3400, which we don't use, and 9600, which was advances, and that was to match code 3500. Again, if you use an asset and code it, it shows in your balance sheet, you can track it. The board will be able to know that the money that you put as startup money to gates, concessions, trailer park, whatever, it's accounted for. It still belongs to the fair board. When it's in and out of here, it just muddies the water. So we did away with those accounts. Your 9700 code, you'll see we got a little more specific with it. 9710, it used to just say 9700. Non-sufficient funds, reimbursement, all went in one number. We actually assigned them numbers so you could track them. So if you get non-sufficient funds, they go under 9710. I put mine in there when I get a non-sufficient. When they make it good, I can subtract it back off of that account. So you can keep track of who you've collected the NSFs off of and who you have not. Security deposit for rentals, buildings, etc. If you don't show it in as a building income, you can put it as a security deposit here, but just be able to track it. And your other miscellaneous, when the all else fails, put it in there. Richard, why did we put that there?
I think we put that other miscellaneous, like we said, as a last resort. It was the catch-all. If it didn't fit into any other category, that would be your other miscellaneous expenses. But however, ideally, that should be very, very little or very, very small. Hopefully, some category up above your expenses are going to fall into one of the other categories.
Okay, and the other thing I would say, if you do put it in the 9790, please be specific. Know why you put it in there. Put a note on it, put a description in the memo, but know why you put that in there, why you felt it didn't fit in one of the other categories. Last page, Meg. On the last page of this, it talks to you about this update. Again, like Richard and Paul said, we're going to have to go back through and change this a few, everything gets changed, as you know. Everything's a work in progress. But we tried to get it updated. We used, Diana's resources, because she had a lot of things that they do at their fairs that I don't do. We sat and talked through a lot of things to make sure that we tried to cover the accounts that are being used. So I hope this kind of helped a little bit. Richard's contact, we will see that it is out there for you. You can email him, you can call me, you can email me. Again, my chart of accounts, it isn't gospel, it's a work in progress. I change it, I update it. But it's a starting point. If you have questions, get a hold of myself. I can get you in contact with Richard. Paul Harris is always around. Any questions that we can help you with?
Why don't we take a minute, if you want to go back to full screen, why don't we take a minute and discuss internal auditing? I think Howard might have something to add on to that too, something to be beneficial along these same lines or a positive, and just hit on that. We've been about an hour here. We don't want to spend too much time, but maybe just a quick recap on internal auditing and how you'd handle that at your fair level.
Well, good morning, everybody. Glad to see we have about 46 people on the call. One thing that has bothered me, both professionally as well as personally, has been the number of cases where we have people absconding with funds that are society funds. We've had 4 cases here in the last 5 years. And in every case, I've done my due diligence in speaking with the officers, and it appears there's no internal auditing. And here's the process that we talked about at convention 2 years ago. Teresa gave a seminar on that, along with, I think, Kathy Cunningham and maybe Diana. But here's the process we use. Every month when the books close and the bank account documents come in from the bank, the vice president of the society sits down and goes through every transaction. And this can be grueling and it can be quick, but of course, the summer months when you're writing your fare payments and so forth, that's a pretty big document. But go through that and double check, make sure that everything is in order. So when the auditor comes in, there is no question in regard to the receipts and disbursement documentation that gets sent and is available for them under their request. Again, we do find some errors, some posting errors. We find, some checks not being translated correctly, scribed out correctly. And this just helps the society. It gives that confidence to the board of directors that they know what's going on. And then every meeting, the treasurer submits a detailed report of revenue and expenses, along with outstanding bills, accounts that are in arrears, that are due to the board. So the whole board knows exactly where we are to the penny every month. And I think, if these 4 groups have been doing this, we would not have seen the issues, or they've been discovered very quickly in being transparent. As we know, that's a word that's becoming very prevalent in our society, transparency. But I think we owe it to ourselves, sitting on our board of directors, that we do this. So if someone would like to have a one-on-one conversation with either Diana Cochran, Teresa Call, or Howard Call, or Paul Harris. Those two ag societies are doing this on a monthly basis. Feel free to contact us and we will be glad to walk through and do a demonstration for you. Thank you, Paul.
Got another question there in the chat box to get that certificate. We covered that earlier. It's on the Ohio Fair Manager's website under the convention tab. Just need to pop it down and go down to the bottom. Those continuing education certificates are there, as well as the links to this, as well as the link to this PowerPoint today that Bev put together, the slide, the presentation on chart of accounts, and those notes is highlights that she's got on it as well. That's all on that convention tab. So there's some more questions for Bev. I know you guys been very involved in the chat box and stuff and coming up a lot of stuff. We have some more questions here.
I see they thanked the OFMA for doing the Zoom sessions. It's available on the website. How do we get the certificate? Yes, I'd like to thank Meg also. Meg's my computer guru. I'm not good at this sharing screen stuff, and so Meg's my go-to. And Diana, thank you so much for the help. Diana made sure she was on today to help explain some stuff in there. There was a question about redoing the 2020 books as the receipts were not properly put in the categories. Don't redo them now. I would say just get things updated for 2021, but make a note of where you think some of the things may not be in the right codes. The other thing that we need to be cognizant of is when you're doing this, don't delete checks that have not cleared. That messes up your beginning balance on your state report, and that makes it extremely hard to do your next year's state report. So if you run into trouble and you have checks that did not get cashed, call me and I'll help walk you through that. Had a couple fairs this year that deleted the checks and then their beginning balance was not correct. It says, check, are we also required to get, thank you so much. We have an audit committee of 3 directors that review the work, which is recommended. You need to have an audit committee. It's recommended to have other eyes looking, not that you're doing anything wrong. And I'll be honest with you, most of them don't understand what you do. So it doesn't hurt to have some of them look at it. You can explain why we use the codes we use. I know some of my directors have been on for years and they don't understand the coding system yet. Thank you to everyone. This has been a great meeting. Thanks for the great Zoom. Thanks for your time and hard work. I'd like to thank Richard Cunningham. He's been really easy and fun to work with. I can call him when I have questions, and a special thank you to Richard. Again, anything we can do to help. I know it's been an hour and 20 minutes and you're all getting ready to get out of here. Give us a call, email me. It's bev@canfieldfair.com. Just email if you've got a question. Make sure that your phone number or something's there. I'll get right back with you. Paul, thanks for all of your help in putting all these meetings together. Howard, wish I was there, dear.
Well, in the beginning of the chat are the 2 links for the certificates that Bob Dawson built. One for the earlier session that we had, and then one for today's session. So, and again, they're on the convention documents tab on the off the homepage. Go to that and you'll find open that up and it's the first tab that has all these documents and the PowerPoints in there.
Thank you, everybody, for participating. The other thing we need to talk about real quick is next week. Don't forget, this continues on. We are booked through March on topics. Next week will be the 23rd, next Tuesday. And we'll actually have a roundtable. So that one's going to be anything goes. Kim Myers, Director at Large from out at Lorain County Fair, very active. He's going to put together a small presentation program to keep it active and moving. But any questions you guys might have, hopefully we'll have more updates too on where we are for getting fairs reopened. That's a slow process, but we've been at it every day working on it. Hopefully we'll have some updates along the way. So that'll be next Tuesday as well. This session was recorded. It'll be on YouTube. You guys can go back and watch it as many times as you want and figure things out, whatever you need if you have questions along the way. So,
Paul, the one question Sally has, she understands I said you can put your financial statement on your website now and do not have to print it out.
That's correct. That was with the addition to House Bill 665 passing. We've been able to put that on the website at a specified time that it needs to be on there, but you no longer have to put it in the paper. It no longer has to be printed in a newspaper of choice. Now, that's where we come into play with the rule updates, because the rule updates still require you to put a printed abstract together with your annual report and submit it to the Department of Agriculture. So now we have to get the rule update to go along with it. That rule might not change by this fall, but I'm confident, I don't know if Morgan's on here today or not, but I'm confident that they will waive that in that rule if they don't get it changed. It'll certainly not be required. So you will no longer have to put that in a newspaper and have a printed abstract. So.
Right. And those are effective April the 10th. Remember, that effective date is April the 10th.
Right.
The problem with the way that works out, you know, we have laws that govern the red book, and then we have rules in the red book from the department. So now the rules we have to go through and update to match the laws, but they said it could take up to 6 months to get that done because we have to go through the common sense committee. We have to go back to JCAR and everything to have all those signed off on. They're not going to be a problem to change them. It could just take some time to change them. That's all. So.
I see Meg put my email up there. She also put the convention document link up on the chat room. She sent the link out for next week's meeting. So can you send that link out in an email when this session is over? We'll lose it. Oh, Beth doesn't have a lot of faith in her ability here, Paul. Okay, so if there aren't any other questions, I guess we've probably talked their ears off, and I appreciate everybody staying on, going through this. If you need something, get a hold of us, get a hold of the OFMA office. They'll get you in contact with us.
I
I
would
hope
say
everybody's staying safe.
If you're having trouble getting any of these links or getting any of this done, contact your district director. Make your district director do their job. Get a hold of your district director in your area and make your district director get this information out to you. If they have to call fair manager's office or anybody else, they can. But by all means, put those district directors to work. So
I appreciate everybody. If you need something, get a hold of us.
thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Up, Howard, enjoy the warmth. Yeah.
Oh, don't worry, I am.
We're the only state that's warm.
Leanne, you want to stop the recording, please?